Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today we have counter fairies. Now, pretty much what this deck is about is just saying no to your opponent, and it works best going first because it's all about counter traps. But unfortunately, we are going to be going second. So we're up against ABC, I believe. So he's gonna start off by a normal summoning Silver Gadget, special summoning Buster Drake, and then linking into Union Carrier, and Union Carrier will search another Buster Drake. He has this Symphonic Warrior guitar stuff. He can special summon a mix, and this gives him another special summon for the turn. He's gonna activate Union Carrier, which will equip a Photon Orbital to his from his what do you call it, the hand. And next, he's just gonna be summoning Galaxy Soldier, and using Galaxy Soldier search another Galaxy Soldier. Xyz into a Cyber Dragon Nova. Will go into Cyber Dragon Infinity. He's gonna normal summon Galaxy Soldier, and just use Cyber Dragon Infinity to absorb it. Not sure how great of a play that was using is Cyber attributing over the Union Carrier. But let's go to our turn. We have opened 3 Solemn Strikes, and he's gonna be using Infinity on our Zeradias, Herald of Heaven. And we're going to be keeping this Ultimate Providence. I don't think I will be using it this turn, unfortunately. But he's going to normal summon Symphonic Warrior Guitar. He'll use its effect. I'm going to change Solemn Strike, and I will negate that, and then I activate the effect of this man. And he's a very cool card. Unfortunately, he's not Light Fairy, so he's not very searchable in this deck. But pretty much, if you negate the activation of your opponent's card, then you get to summon it, and then depending on what card you negated, you get different effects. If you negate a spell, you inflict 1500. If you negate a trap, you destroy a card your opponent controls. And if you negate a monster effect, then you can special summon a monster in your graveyard. And so I don't really have the greatest of monsters in my graveyard. I just have a Zeradias who will just destroy himself once he's summoned. So he tries to negate my Vandaglion, I think it's pronounced, Vandalgion, with his Infinity, but I just negate that with my thing. And I'm gonna activate its effect. He chains Gamma. I don't want my Vandaglion to die, so I chain my third Solemn Strike. And he was like, "How? It's 3 Solemn Strikes? Are you kidding me?" So pretty much we're just gonna draw. We don't have the greatest thing right now. We have an Ultimate Providence. I just decide to hold on to this Rebirth of Parshat in case I ever need it later, and really not the best card right now. So he just draws an Ash. We draw a Ties of Brethren. Attack for some more damage. Set the Rebirth of Parshat because it could potentially be decent. He sets the Ash and then unauthorized reactivation, which just equips stuff, basically a walking Union Carrier, except for only for Union monsters. Now I will be holding on to this Solemn Warning for the Rebirth of Parshat. In case you don't know what this does, when any effect is activated, you can reveal a counter trap in your hand, discard a card, and pay 1000, so 3 different activation costs. Negate it, shuffle it into deck, and then you summon a Parshat monster from your deck or extra deck, which is super great. He draws a gold gadget, and he will just be using unauthorized reactivation. We're going to be chaining Rebirth of Parshat, and we're going to be discarding Ties of Brethren in order to negate it, and we summon a Sacred Arc Air Knight Parshat. What this does is it has a weird summoning condition, but I usually just summon it off my Rebirth of Parshat. What it does, if it attacks a defense position, just inflicts piercing, and when it inflicts damage, you can pretty much just search another Parshat or any counter trap, which is super great. So now he's going to go into battle phase. He's going to crash, and pretty much I might think this has some kind of effect, but I could have just done something, I guess. I don't know what I could have done. I mean, I think he might have run out of gadgets in his deck because it can only summon gadgets. But yes, that was our first duel, because next turn I could have just easily ODK'd him. So that was our first duel. Let's go on to our next one then. For this duel, I think we're up against Sharks. Yep, opening 3 Beautiful Princesses. So we're gonna start off by normal summoning the Power Angel Valkyria. He's just gonna Ash my Ties of Brethren. That's fine. Doesn't matter too much. We have a Judgment and an Ultimate Providence, so that's great. He's gonna activate Beautiful Princess. I'll just Ultimate Providence that, and we get the search. We get a search for a Bountiful Artemis of Power Angel Valkyria. Next, we can just normal summon the Power Angel, set a drastic drop off, and then we can attack for some damage. Next, he's going to use the other two Beautiful Princesses he has, normal summon one, and since Judgment does not negate monster effects, I will have to negate the summon itself, so we're going to be doing that. And Bountiful Artemis will let me draw one, and since I didn't negate an effect, Power Angel Valkyria will not trigger. So next, still running low on life points. I know I could have just finished him off if I activated Ties of Brethren, but I wanted to play with my food a little bit more. I wanted to make him suffer. So I said the solemn warning. I have a drastic drop off. What could go wrong? So I decided that this deck doesn't draw a lot now, does it? So I just activate drastic drop off, and then I think something happens. I drew one off Bountiful Artemis. You're gonna activate Buzzsaw Shark. I saw morning that, and then I get to draw one of Artemis, and I get to search one of Valkyria, and pretty much he's gonna activate White Mirror, which I believe lets him like summon stuff. I don't know how this works. I don't know how it works. Don't really care. And he can't use its effect again because it's you can only use its effect, not activate. So he had to end his turn right there, and I could have easily just went for game because he didn't have anything else in his hand. So yes, I could have finished him a lot earlier with my Ties of Brethren. Oh no, I couldn't have because I can't use do my battle phase the turn I do my Ties of Brethren. Never mind, I would just summon a few monsters. I wouldn't have been able to use Solemn Warning. I think that's what I thought of when I set the Solemn Warning instead of activate Ties of Brethren. So yes, that was our second duel. So let's go on to our next one then. For our next duel is we are up against the Raid Raptors using the new Raid Raptor support that they're getting in Phantom Rage. So we are going to be going second, I believe. He just sets Call by the Grave Pass. So Call by the Grave Pass always the best play. We normal summon Minerva, Scholar of the Sky. In case you don't know, if every time counter traps activated, it gains 500, and if Sanctuary in the Sky is active on the field at that point, then I just get to recover a counter trap. So we activate Ties of Brethren. We get to summon for Bountiful Artemis and Power Angel Valkyria. Next we can set to Solemn Strike and Providence, and pretty much we can't attack, so we're just gonna have to stop it there. He sets the Mimicry Lanius. He seems to be breaking really hard. We set the drastic drop off, and I kind of decide to just attack with my Bountiful Artemis. And since none of my monsters could actually beat over that thing, I had to use my Honest right there. I didn't really have to. I could have just coped with the 100 damage, but I didn't want him to just have more material on field. So he's gonna activate Monster Reborn. I let that pass. He normally summons another Mimicry Lanius, and he activates Raid Raptor Nest, which lets him search one, but I immediately get rid of it with drastic drop off. Next, Artemis will trigger, which lets me draw one, and Minerva gets another 1500. So he's gonna activate Exton Knight, and I will just Solemn Strike that, and then all of my people will trigger. He'll gain 500 and recovers my drastic drop off from graveyard. Bountiful Artemis will draw one, and Power Angel Valkyria will get me another search. He pretty much doesn't have anything left, so he will have to stop there. One of the main win conditions of this deck is pretty much just to get rid of all resources your opponents have while generating advantage using cards like Bountiful Artemis and Valkyria. So that was our second last duel actually. We're just going to do one more duel and straight to the deck profile then. For our last duel, we are up against Mech Knight, it seems. Not Mech Knight, sorry, Orcust. So yes, pretty generic Orcust deck running OCG stuff. This was an OCG game, so he was using Maxi. But doesn't matter because this deck doesn't special summon. So we're going to start off with an extravagant Spanish 6 and draw 2. We have a dualities, which will let us search a bountiful Artemis, of course. We'll normal summon the Artemis, set 2. If I wanted, I should have just kept the strike in my hand, because I'd say the negate of Parshat is more useful than the negate of Psalm Strike. But doesn't matter too much. We're going to activate Zeradias, which will get us our search for Sanctuary in the Sky activated, because why not? It just provides an extra layer of protection, making all battle damage 0. So he's going to activate Orchestrated Return, pitching off one of his 2 Gearsus in hand. And he's playing Paleozoic Dinomischus, which is actually great, I'd say. So he normal summons the Gearsu, he tries to use its effect. That's going to get striked, so no Gearsu for you. Artemis will just let us draw 1. And he's going to set 2 Dinomischus and pass. So now we're going to start off. Oh yes, and also I just wanted to use my Vandalgion right there. I accidentally clicked away from the yes button, so I couldn't use it. But it doesn't matter too much, we still get a bit of damage. He's going to activate Dinomischus. We're going to chain Rebirth of Parshat. Discard this other copy of Rebirth of Parshat we have in our hand. And that will get negated, and we summon a Sacred Arc Aeronite Parshat. And as you know, if it inflicts damage, I get to search another counter trap or a Parshat. And now we can activate Vandaglion, which I could have summoned him and popped his other Dinomischus, but unfortunately he's just going to use his other Dinomischus. I believe pitched off a Maxi, so just an extra amount of damage. And we're going to activate the effect of Parshat Sanctum, which will pretty much just stack our deck with the Solemn Strike for next turn. And right here he couldn't use his Dark Grepher even if he wanted to, and even if he tried to just attack us with something I had an Honest in hand anyways. Call by Grave wouldn't really do anything. I don't think I have any monsters in my graveyard. Forbidden Droplet once again wouldn't do anything. Next, at most he probably could have just set a Dark Grepher, set Call by the Grave. That was his best move. I would have drawn into a Solemn Strike, just attack with my Artemis, attack with that. If I really wanted to, I could have used a Ties of Brethren, get even more monsters, because why not? And pretty much he was going to top deck a Scrap Recycler, but I would have had my Solemn Strike ready for that. So basically what this deck does, it just says no to your opponent. That's literally all it does. To get good at this deck, you have to practice saying the word no 10 times a day. And those were the duels, so let's go straight to our deck profile then. So here is the deck. We have 1 copy of Sacred Arcanite Aeronite Parshat. I just call it Parshat thing. So what it does as a weird summoning condition, if you activate a counter trap or negate a spell trap or monster effect, you can banish 2 fairies from your hand or field, hand or graveyard, and summon it. I don't know why it needed to banish 2 fairies. I mean, I guess its effect is great where it inflicts damage. You can search something. I mean, could have been a bit more lenient on that banish 2 fairies. But whatever, we never summoned it to that way. We just summoned it off our Rebirth of Parshat. We run 2 copies of Vandalgion, the Dark Dragon Lord. I'm tempted to run 3. It's actually a very great card just in this deck. Maybe I could cut down Ties of Brethren, but it's just a super great card. It kind of becomes useless if you don't draw enough counter traps, and basically just has different effects depending on what you negate with the counter trap, on top of being a 2800 body, which is kind of what this deck really needs. 1 copy of Zeradius, Herald of Heaven. Just search a Sanctuary of the Sky, which can turn on some of your other cards like Minerva, Divine Punishment, and other stuff like that. 3 copies of Bountiful Artemis. Just the extra draws are super useful. The 1 copy of Power Angel Valkyria. The main reason why I only run 1 is it doesn't serve that great of a purpose, just searching a Light Fairy, as the Light Fairies in this deck don't do much by themselves. They need counter traps to go with them. I mean, I guess you could search a Bountiful Artemis, but on top of that, it's only once per turn, unlike cards like Bountiful Artemis and Minerva, Scholar of the Sky. Um, so I think those are the main problems with running too many of this card. It can sometimes just clog up your hand. You don't want to brick too much. You don't want to run too many monsters because you do rely on your counter traps even more. So that is kind of the reason why I just run one. Two copies of Honest. Most cards in this deck are light except the Vandalgion, but you don't have to worry much about the Vandalgion. It's a 2800 beat stick, so it's fine. And Honest just lets them beat over anything, really. Three copies of Ties of the Brethren just helps you get more of the important monsters, because all the important monsters are level 4s. Cards like Bountiful Artemis, Power Angel Valkyria, Minerva Scholar of the Sky, or in some cases even Honest, where you can just bounce it back to your hand using its own effect. Ties of the Brethren is just really great in this deck, especially because you don't know special summon that much. Three copies of Extravagance. Draw 2 really helps the consistency, because this deck can kind of fall back in consistency, mainly because if you draw too many traps, you're not that great. You're in a pretty decent position, but not that great. If you draw too many monsters, they can't do anything without their traps, so you pretty much have to rely on your draw spells to get you a perfect balance of the monsters and traps. Three copies of Duality for the same reasons as before. The Duality can conflict with your Ties of the Brethren, but I'd say you should prioritize the depending on your hand. If you have a lot of counter traps, then I'd say prioritize Ties, and if you don't have any counter traps at all, I recommend just using Pot of Duality instead. Three copies of Sanctum of Parshat. It treats its name as Sanctuary of the Sky whilst in the field or graveyard, so you don't really have to run. You only need to run one copy of this extra Sanctuary of the Sky, and pretty much it's just kind of like it basically stacks cards from your graveyard into your deck, traps or fairies, and it makes everything gain 300, and basically a better version of Sanctuary of the Sky, which is needed for some effects to resolve, such as I said, Divine Punishment, Minerva, Scholar of the Sky, and that stuff, or even Zeradius in some extents. One copy of Sanctuary of the Sky, just a search of Zeradius. Having a decent beat stick isn't that bad, just in terms of Zeradius, which is why we run him and the Sanctuary of the Sky. But it's not that useful, I'd say. You really just use it just because it can help some of your effects resolve. For counter traps, you run one copy of Drastic Drop Off. You can run more than one, but the main problem with running this card, too many of this card, is that it does trigger cards that rely on you activating counter traps specifically, like Bountiful Artemis and Minerva, but it doesn't negate anything, which will whiff the effects of cards like Power Angel Valkyria or Vandalgion or Sacred Air Knight Parshat thing. So those are some of the main reasons why Drastic Drop Off may not be the best card in this deck, but it's still a pretty solid counter trap nonetheless. Two copies of Ultimate Providence. It's basically an Omni Negate, but you have to discard a monster, spell, or trap of the same type. And you don't really have to pay its cost if you're running Guiding Ariadne, which is super great. Two copies of Solemn Strike. I used to run Strike and Warning at 3, but unfortunately I just couldn't keep that much space in my deck, so I had to cut down to 2. But once again, you can change this deck any way you like. I just like running this at 2, and I run the big one, Solemn Judgment, probably the best one, at 3. Once again, it can negate spells and traps, and negating a summon does not trigger cards like your Power Angel Vandalgion or your does trigger Air Knight, but doesn't trigger Vandalgion or Power Angel Valkyria, my bad. But Judgment is just very solid card. Two copies of Rebirth of Parshat. Not only does it negate, you can bypass 2 of its costs using Guiding Ariadne, where you don't have to discard any cards or pay life points for the activation costs of trap cards, and pretty much just reveal counter trap, negate a card and shuffle it into deck, and then you get to summon a Parshat from your deck or extra deck. Honestly, this is a very unrefined deck. You could probably play Abyss Dweller in this deck, mainly because the amount of level 4s you have. Um, didn't really read this thing. The only reason I'd say just run 2 for your Rebirth of Parsha. Not the most important. You can probably cut it down to 1. Play something better like a Nightmare Cerberus. There are just lots of things you can do to refine this deck, as I'm doing right now. And Rebirth of Parsha is just a really solid card that you are able to fulfill its activation requirement most of the time, but sometimes you do have to let go of one negate, such as something like a Solemn Strike in your hand to trigger its effect. But it is inherently better than Solemn Strike, as it's an Omni negate and it not just negates monster effects. So I guess that's there. And Rebirth Parsha is just a really great card, as it can help you get a very one of the bigger monsters in this deck, Sacred Argeronite Parshat, and this is a very great card in the deck, just helping you search cards that will help you just get rid of your opponent entirely. One copy of Divine Punishment. The only reason why I run one is because it is very dependent on a Sanctuary in the Sky, and you can brick on it if you don't have it. It just becomes a blank card. That's the main reason why I only run one. 2 copies of Solemn Warning. Solemn Warning is Solemn Warning negates summons in general, so that is great. And for extra deck, 1 copy of Avenging Aeronite Parshat. Just a decent, well, it's not a decent card at all. It's a terrible card, but just to summon off Rebirth of Parshat in case you need it. 1 copy of Abyss Dweller, because this deck can get level 4s really easily, especially with Ties of Brethren. 1 copy of Mekk-Knight Crusader Avermax, just a really great card in general. Especially, it's basically can't bypass it by battle, so they have to rely on spells and trapped effects, and they can't even target it, which is super great. 1 copy of Boral Sword, just a super great OTK card, so that is something. 1 copy of Access Code Talker. Access code is access code, just basically an OP version of Dark Arm Dragon, just being able to pop your opponent's entire field while OTKing in the process, on top of having that effect spell speed 4, so your opponent cannot respond to it. 1 copy of Appaloosa. Appaloosa is just super great. 4 negates, always nice. You won't always get 4 negates, probably less, but just a nice card to have. 3 copies of Celestial Knight Lord Parshat. This is probably one of the only cards you don't want to banish off your Extravagance, because it basically discards a card to search a Sanctuary in the Sky or a card that lists it, so it can kind of search Minerva or Rebirth Divine Punishment, or just Sanctum Parshat in case you need to recur cards for duality. Just a really solid card. And on top of that, if Sanctuary in the Sky is active while you activate its effect, you basically get to search a fairy instead, and then you can banish fairy from your graveyard to summon a fairy from your hand, which is super great. For our next 3 cards, just the Nightmares, Unicorn, Phoenix, Cerberus for generic removal, and 3 copies of Herald of the Mirage Lights. It's basically a spell or trap negate. You have to discard a fairy to trigger it, and I believe it does trigger cards that rely on you negating effects such as Vandalgion, or something like this Power Angel Valkyria. So that is really great. And if it is sent to the graveyard by an opponent's card, its second effect's not that great, just recurring ritual spells and monsters, but its first effect is decent in its deck, so I just opt to run at a high amount. For you can just take out 1 for another generic rank 4, such as Tornado Dragon. I don't recommend running Exiton Knight in this deck, because you are going to be just demolishing your opponent's field, not your own. So yes, that was the deck. I hope you enjoyed it. Do like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video. Bye bye.